After years of raising her son, working double shifts, and keeping her emotions locked deep inside, she had grown used to the silence around her Vancouver apartment. It wasn't the peaceful kind of silence, more like the kind that follows after a storm, when everything looks calm but feels empty. So when her son Liam surprised her with 2 plane tickets to the Maldives, she didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or refuse out of habit. He had always been the thoughtful one, noticing things she thought she hid well. "Mom, you need this," he had said with a smile that tried to lift her tired heart. The moment they landed in the Maldives, Emily felt something shift. The air was warm in a way she hadn't felt in years. The ocean was so blue it looked unreal, like a painting someone created just to remind her of forgotten dreams. The resort stood on a stretch of clear water that sparkled under the sunlight, and even though she tried to stay calm, her heart reacted before her mind did. She felt lighter, almost like she had stepped out of the heavy version of herself she carried back home. They checked in quickly, and Liam kept talking about all the things they would do: swim, eat good food, walk along the shore, but Emily found herself distracted by the colors, the sounds, and how different the world felt here. It was almost like the island wanted her to remember she was still alive. She breathed in slowly, letting the warm air soften a part of her she had forgotten was still tender. The next morning, the sun rose with a glow so soft that Emily stood on the balcony just to watch it. The ocean stretched endlessly, moving with a calm rhythm that felt comforting. Liam walked out with a grin. "Mom, today we're playing a game," he declared, holding up 2 new swimsuits he bought from the resort shop. She raised her eyebrows, unsure whether to scold him for spending money or laugh at his excitement. "You haven't had fun in so long," he said gently. "Just try it. No rules. We just enjoy the day." Emily wanted to argue, but something inside her whispered that maybe she did need to let go a little. After all, she hadn't done anything for herself in years. Maybe this was her chance to feel human again instead of just responsible. As she considered the idea, her attention drifted toward the pier below. A man stood there, tall with a relaxed posture, as if the ocean was speaking directly to him. He wore a simple white shirt, slightly fluttering in the breeze, and his expression carried a softness she recognized, a quiet sadness hidden behind a calm face. Before she realized she was staring, he turned, and their eyes met. The moment was brief, but it left something fluttering inside her chest. Not attraction, at least, not the obvious kind, but a sense of familiarity, as if he understood something about her, without knowing anything. She quickly looked away, feeling strangely self-conscious. She wasn't used to being noticed anymore. Her life had revolved around responsibility for so long that she forgot what it felt like to meet someone's gaze and feel something shift. Later, when she stepped onto the beach with Liam, the sunlight wrapped around her, warm and gentle. She wore the swimsuit he insisted she try: simple, elegant, modest, yet different from the clothes she usually chose. She felt nervous at first, but as she walked closer to the water, the sound of the waves calmed her. Her feet touched the warm sand, and she realized she had forgotten how comforting simple things could be. The beach wasn't crowded, which made her feel safer. She stood closer to the water, letting the waves wash lightly over her toes. Liam ran ahead, already excited, calling her to join him. She smiled despite herself, feeling a rare spark of happiness. Then she heard a voice beside her, calm, deep, warm. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" She turned. It was the man from the pier, up close. He looked even more composed, with kind eyes that carried a quiet depth. He introduced himself as Daniel Hayes, a travel photographer from Boston. He said he came to the Maldives for a work break, needing space to clear his thoughts after a difficult year. Emily felt her heart soften just a little. She understood the weight of unspoken stories. Their conversation was brief, but surprisingly easy. There was no awkwardness, no pressure, just two strangers sharing the same air, the same sky, the same quiet heaviness they both tried to manage. Liam called for her again, and she excused herself politely. Daniel smiled and wished her a good day, then walked toward the edge of the pier dock as she joined her son. She felt something unexpected. It wasn't excitement or fear, something quieter, something gentler. A small movement inside her that whispered she wasn't as closed off as she thought. For the first time in many years, Emily felt like her story wasn't finished. Something new had appeared, small, delicate, but real enough to make her heart aware of its own beating. And she didn't yet know that Daniel Hayes would soon become the reason her world started to open again. The afternoon sun in the Maldives had a warm, golden glow that made everything seem softer, gentler, almost unreal. Emily walked beside the water with Liam, trying to stay calm despite the flutter in her chest. She wasn't used to vacations, wasn't used to sunlight touching her skin this freely. And she definitely wasn't used to wearing a swimsuit in public, after so many years of hiding behind long sleeves and responsibilities. But her son's excitement made it easier to pretend she was comfortable. Liam ran ahead into the shallow water, laughing like he used to when he was little. Emily watched him with a soft smile. These moments felt rare times when she didn't have to think about bills, work, or the constant pressure of being both mother and father. Today, she let herself breathe. She stepped forward, letting the warm waves rise around her ankles. The breeze brushed her shoulders, and she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the peace sink in. When she opened them, she heard a familiar, calm voice. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon." She turned, and there he was, Daniel Hayes, the quiet man from the pier. He looked relaxed, the sunlight catching the edge of his smile. He held his camera loosely by his side, the strap wrapped around his wrist. Something about him felt naturally gentle, the kind of person who didn't need many words to be understood. Emily tried to hide her surprise. "Oh, hello again." He glanced at the water, then back at her. "Looks like you're enjoying the day." She gave a small laugh. "Trying. I'm a little out of practice." Daniel stepped closer but still kept a respectful distance. Vacations can be strange at first. It takes time to let your mind slow down. His voice had a quiet warmth that made her shoulders drop a little, releasing tension she didn't even know she was holding. She didn't usually talk to strangers, especially not men, but there was something safe about him. Something familiar, though she had only seen him twice. They stood silently for a moment before Liam splashed water toward them. "Mom, come on," he shouted, waving his arms. Emily shook her head, amused. And Daniel laughed softly. "He seems like a good kid," Daniel said. "He's the best part of my life," she replied without thinking. Daniel nodded as if he understood something deeper behind her words. "I can see that." They talked lightly about the ocean, about how surreal the Maldives felt, about where they were from. Emily learned he lived in Boston and traveled often for work, capturing landscapes and stories through photos. He didn't talk about himself much, but whenever he did, there was a softness beneath his words, as if he carried memories he wasn't ready to share. At one point, he pointed toward the far end of the beach. "There's a small gathering tonight. The resort sets up lights and music. Nothing loud, just peaceful. If you feel like going, you and your son should join." Emily hesitated. Her instinct was to say no. Crowds made her nervous, and she wasn't sure she wanted to be seen, especially by someone who seemed to notice her more deeply than she expected. But before she could answer, Liam returned, dripping water everywhere. "Mom, who's this?" he asked, curious. "This is Daniel. He's a photographer," she explained. Daniel smiled and introduced himself kindly. Liam liked him instantly. Emily could tell by the way his eyes brightened. Her son had a good sense of people, always had. Are you coming to the beach party tonight? Liam asked, surprising Emily. Daniel nodded. I'll be there. Liam turned to his mother with a hopeful grin. Then we should go too, right? Emily felt caught between her natural caution and the gentle encouragement in her son's eyes. She didn't want to disappoint him, and she didn't want to seem closed off in front of Daniel. So she said, We'll see. Daniel didn't push. He simply nodded as if he understood everything unspoken between them. Before he walked away, he lifted his camera. Do you mind? Emily blinked. Take a picture. Of me? He shook his head softly. Of the view behind you. The moment looks nice. She stepped aside quickly, embarrassed. He laughed a little, not unkindly, and took the shot. Then he thanked her and walked down the beach, leaving a quiet emptiness in the space he had filled. As he disappeared into the distance, Emily stood there, unsure why her heart felt unsteady. She reminded herself she was just a tired mother on vacation, not someone who needed to think about the kindness of strangers, not someone who needed to feel anything more than peace. And yet, she couldn't ignore the tiny spark that lit inside her when Daniel spoke, or the calm she felt when he was near. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes it takes being far from home to remember parts of ourselves we left behind. Their hands drifted close on the surface of the water, not touching, but close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. It was a quiet moment, full of unspoken things but free from expectations. When they walked back to the sand, the sunlight drying their skin, Daniel paused beside her. Emily, I didn't expect to meet someone who makes the world feel calm again. Her heart tightened, not painfully, but in a tender way. She didn't know how to respond. She wasn't ready to promise anything, yet she didn't want to push him away either. So she simply breathed in, letting the ocean air steady her thoughts. And then she said gently, Thank you for being kind to me. Daniel smiled, soft and genuine. It's easy. You make it easy. They didn't rush the moment. They didn't create anything dramatic. They simply stood on the warm sand, sharing a quiet connection that felt honest and new. Emily didn't need to decide anything yet. She just needed to feel present. As Liam ran toward them, laughing and calling her name, Emily looked at the two people who had unexpectedly changed her days. Her son reminded her of love she already had. Daniel reminded her of love she didn't know she could feel again. For the first time in many years, Emily felt hope, gentle, steady, and bright like sunlight, reflecting on calm water. And she realized it wasn't the game her son suggested that changed everything. It was allowing herself to live again. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes it takes being far from home to remember parts of ourselves we left behind. Their hands drifted close on the surface of the water, not touching, but close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. It was a quiet moment, full of unspoken things but free from expectations. When they walked back to the sand, the sunlight drying their skin, Daniel paused beside her. Emily, I didn't expect to meet someone who makes the world feel calm again. Her heart tightened, not painfully, but in a tender way. She didn't know how to respond. She wasn't ready to promise anything, yet she didn't want to push him away either. So she simply breathed in, letting the ocean air steady her thoughts. And then she said gently, Thank you for being kind to me. Daniel smiled, soft and genuine. It's easy. You make it easy. They didn't rush the moment. They didn't create anything dramatic. They simply stood on the warm sand, sharing a quiet connection that felt honest and new. Emily didn't need to decide anything yet. She just needed to feel present. As Liam ran toward them, laughing and calling her name, Emily looked at the two people who had unexpectedly changed her days. Her son reminded her of love